congratulations for Dr. PIECZENICK, best-selling author, wrote books with Tom Clancy, produced big movies, worked in the State Department, did a lot of covert action stuff, overthrowing governments, you name it. And he's given us a lot of good intel. I want to know about why Tillerson's out. Stone said it back in December. Then he said he'll be gone by March. He actually gave, by early March is what he said. Tillerson's gone. What does that mean? What does it mean about Pompeo coming in? And then, I don't make about us, but my God, they are everywhere saying get rid of conservative, libertarian free speech, pre-control it. People that question official narratives must be banned. My lawyers, some of them are some of the best lawyers in the country on defamation. They said this new thing filed by Georgetown Law probably will be thrown out because there should be congressional hearings since it's taxpayer funded at that law school. It's a private school, but the law school's taxpayer mainly funded. And they said it's defamation in the suit on purpose and as a stunt, and it calls for the end of the First Amendment and prior constraint and inverts Supreme Court rulings. So my lawyer said if this passed, it would repeal, if they prevail, it will repeal the First Amendment. And we've got the head of YouTube calling for it, all of it. So I want to talk about both those areas and where we are as a republic. Where do you want to start first?
Where we are as a republic, we're doing quite well. The fact that Rex Tillerson was leaving, Roger's correct. We've known that for well over half a year to a year. We've prepared for that in terms of providing Pompeo, who was #1 at West Point. He was #1 at Harvard, and we knew that he could work with Trump in a much better emotional alliance than Rex Tillerson. But I must say, Secretary of State Tillerson is an elegant man, incredibly bright, incredibly effective. I'm sorry to see him go, and I'm sorry to see the way he was going, because I would treat this man with the utmost respect. He reminds me of James Baker, a very solid American and an incredible asset to this country. I would hope that he would continue as being an advisor of some sort. But I understand what Trump is doing. Trump will be getting rid of McMaster soon, the national security advisor. And we, in turn, in the military and the intelligence world, would appreciate if he picked Lieutenant General Nakasone, who's head of Cyber Command and was a student and a deputy to General Keith Alexander. And what would happen isn't that we would have more military, we would have more effective technological advancement at the national security level. At the same time, we have a new DCI. She's a woman. I understand she's very highly regarded. I don't know her personally. Gina has. She has a history of being involved under Clinton in rendition, interrogation, and torture. I'm not for that. I was against it, as you well know. However, having said that, I will not stop her nomination on that basis, because if you go after her, then you have to go after her boss, Jose Rodriguez, who was head of the counterterrorism office. And if you go after him, then you have to go after John Brennan. And if you go after John Brennan, then you have to go after Obama and Bush Jr.
Sure, it's selective to burn a middle-level person when they were following orders.
Correct. And basically, she was given a legal waiver on that. I was told that it was legally allowed at that particular point in time. From a point of view of effectiveness and morality, I don't agree with it. I would hope she would explain it to the Senate committee and explain why it was done and why she will not continue to do that. Torture and rendition is not effective. Ironically, rendition came in under Clinton, Bill Clinton. They never said anything about it. And the torture interrogation came in by the biggest draft dodger I've ever met. That was Cheney and Bush Jr. So you have all these cowards who come forth and become a manifest, a macho man at a time when we don't need it, and it's not very effective. But our moral stain will be cleaned if we keep on doing it and avoid the things we did in the past. As for the economy, it's doing well. I think there are certain other people who will have to leave. I agree with Trump. David Shulkin of the VA has been a disaster for the past year. I've complained about him. I'm glad he may be picking Rick Perry to take over, but the VA has been poorly run, very ineffectual. 25 psychiatrists left the Sepulveda VA. He had no idea what he was doing, this physician, Shulkin. And unfortunately, a lot of the veterans now are going to be at the behest of people who really don't know how to treat PTSD. Okay,
shifting gears out of that, because I'm here just kind of giving a general rundown of what you think how Trump's doing. What about, I'm sure you've noticed, CNN going after her sponsors, CNN trying to get us shut off the internet. Hundreds of newspapers a day saying, ban me, I'm a Nazi, get me off, prior constraint. Georgetown law, the lawyers never seen this, filed a suit, they say, to basically set a precedent to ban people that question official narratives. They put all these lies in there. I'm told Soros is funding a bunch of this. What do you make of this giant assault?
I think it's an absurd, non-significant assault, although it creates a lot of problems. The actual thrust of the assault has no basis in reality. As you know, anyone who would question 9/11 would have to explain many things, as they did Sandy Hook, as they did the things that came on in Florida, the 3 false flags. The truth of the matter is, once they attack you, they've attacked millions of us Americans who've said, look, the official narrative or the narrative presented by CNN or MSNBC and the New York Times is not correct. And in fact, what would happen is once they go into court, and you do go to court, people like myself would be happy to explain why technically it was impossible for the Arabs to attack our country and why, in fact, this was a 9/11. Why, in fact, Alex Jones has been able to express the feelings of those in the intelligence community as well as the military community. In other words, what I'm saying to your adversaries, beware of what you want, because you may well end up with a real problem and a real headache. Soros is what we call a Judenrat. He's a Jew-rat. We've had a lot of those people. The Hungarians overall, the Jewish Hungarians, were never really rounded up as much as the Poles, myself, my family, 96% of who were exterminated. The Hungarians, towards the end of the war, all fled to Switzerland, and the guy like Soros is classical Judenrat. He's a slime bag. I've seen him at the Council on Foreign Relations. He's a despicable individual, and this is what happens in a world where you have the rat, the Jew rat, who comes to the forefront and makes a point of it. All he does is to illustrate how disgusting he is and what happened to many Jews who were in fact involved in the Nazi Holocaust. One is Heydrich. None of the Germans, neither the Israelis, want to admit that Heydrich was a Jew. His father was a famous musician. Heydrich was a violinist. He was very much of a Jew. The first town that they attacked in Austria was where Heydrich lived, and he was then in charge of the extermination of Jews. So
you're talking about the blonde beast?
Yes, that's exactly right. And so this gets into a very serious problem where the history of anti-Semitism is distorted. But more importantly, what's not been brought up in that history is exactly what happened to you. There's no mention of the fact that Hitler first took down Lutheran ministers. The reason for that is the Lutherans were the predominant voices of Christianity in the North. Very little was ever said that Lutheran ministers were exterminated in Puck and Dachau. Then he went after the Catholic priests who were in the south part of Bavaria, and they were exterminated until Pope Pius XII made a statement. That's why you have the sound of music. That was not an accident. You had Catholic, Austrian nobility that was exterminated, and no mention is made of that. So Christianity was also exterminated. You have 30 million Slavs.
Sure, Hitler was big-time anti-Christian. He was an occultist and into all sorts of other insanity. Right. So looking at this,
what I'm saying now is the fascism that you saw, I predicted would happen a year ago. When the fascism of the left comes in, or wherever you want to call it, when suddenly political correctness becomes the norm of our speech and the norm of our thinking, you already have the basis of fascism. When we, in fact, contradict that, we are the opposite to fascism, which is the liberalism. The irony is there has been a total switch in positions between the so-called liberals who become the fascists and we who have been called the conservatives. We believe in free speech. We will not censor anybody on the basis of their religion, their color, or any other statement.
And they're now expanding off the universities with their laboratories of ending free speech to the rest of the country and admitting it. It is such a bold launch, such a bold attack, and I don't think it's going to work because it's creating a Streisand effect.
Well, let me tell you what happens. Having attended 3 different elite universities, Cornell University, Cornell Medical School was implicated in all kinds of sadistic activity.
Hold on, stay right there. Back in 2 minutes, I want to get into this because Georgetown, which is the biggest CIA recruiter, is quarterbacking, trying to end the free speech.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
Author Steve PIECZENICK, StevePIECZENICK.com is with us, looking at the transformation happening, not just here, but all over the world. Countries are going for populism. They're going for free market because everybody knows that's the restaurant where the parking lot's full. And that's where the good food's at. And sure enough, see one restaurant with 5 cars, one with 100. If you go to the one with 5 cars, it tastes like crap. You wonder why it's still open. You go to the other place, you know why it has 500 cars or 200 cars. And it's the same thing. Capitalism, free market, all the thousands of choices, everything. It's obviously so much better, but it creates spoiled people who then convalesce into these liberal, socialist, collectivist armies to then make us their slaves. How do we defeat that paradigm? Because, half of millennials identify as communists, they're now reporting. Now, Generation Z, most of them identify as kind of libertarian. They're rebelling against the indoctrination. So what I'm getting at is they are getting so vicious, they are getting so dangerous. And I know you're being positive. I'm positive too, but it's just they have gotten them by successive approximation now. The average leftist is a crazed maniac lunatic now. I experience it. I'm on the street. I see it. They are gone. By successive approximation, pretty soon you are Jim Jones Kool-Aid level. I mean, they are whacked out of their brains. We now have a large part of the population that are radicalized mental patients.
Let me put it this way. What I've been doing for the past couple of years here in this area, in the South, I've been helping conservative men and women who are entering the political system at a very young age, 30, 31, each one of whom has served in our country, mainly in the military. And then they've decided to go on and become lawyers or whatever, teachers. But they have decided to enter into the political mainstream. You have to remember, historically, only 4% of our population at any given time has really been involved in the actual actions of the state or the nation. The republic will remain strong. It doesn't matter whether you have spoiled people or not. For the most part, if people are spoiled, it's because they've had too much or there's very little demand on them. In the case of universities, I do agree they are spoiled. Most of these universities are really tenured institutions for geriatric professors, many of whom don't belong there.
So they're Alice in Wonderland false reality bubbles.
It's not just Alice in Wonderland. They're more lethal than that. At the university level, you have people who have tenure plus a union. That's not just Alice in Wonderland. You have people who have used whatever knowledge they've had, and they've regurgitated that knowledge 20 to 30 years. And in fact, if you went through the university, I'll give any university, including the ones I went to, MIT, I could easily throw out 30% of the faculty. I could go through Harvard Medical School, and I did, and I predicted that their residency program at Mass Mental Health would go under, and that was easily 30 doctors. I could go through Cornell Medical School and easily go through any one of their departments and cull out 30%. Why? Because the university has become a scam. It basically it created a reality which said that if you come to us, no matter what it was, particularly the Ivy League, you will get a phenomenal future. Absolute nonsense. The content was absolutely absurd half the time. Most of that content wasn't relevant. It was there to really the content.
And now they are filing thousands, not just against me, but they're doing it against Fox News for investigating Seth Rich. They are now filing what lawyers say they've never seen: complete bang your head against the wall, made up, screed insanity beyond fiction. It sounds like Fever Swamp, and I guess they're delusional. I think they're going to win. I have one more question, since you mentioned all the patriots running for office. We come back in 60 seconds. Dr. Steve, I was talking to you about this during the break, and I talked about this over the weekend, but I haven't talked about it enough because Julian Assange, we know, is a good source, warns CIA flooding the Democratic Party for 2018 midterms, trying to steal elections, trying to manipulate things, deep state in league with Dems, says WikiLeaks founder. And that article's on Infowars.com. We're going to retweet that newswars.com as well, because it hasn't gotten the attention. I mean, it did get thousands of comments. It did go viral, but people say, well, wait, you have CIA sources that are good, but now the CIA is bad. It's factions, obviously. I know you've worked with the CIA quite a bit and run some of their operations. Why don't you explain to people what's going on here? Because you were saying, no, this is correct, this is going on. And then the reason I raise it is you said, just in your little neck of the woods, you're getting people in the South and in Florida and Georgia, military people that you know are good, that have good records, to run for office themselves. So they're really always been doing this, haven't they? But now we're starting to do it, and so they're now kind of doubling down. Is that an accurate statement?
That's correct. What's happening, you have to remember the history of the CIA was really at the OSS, starting in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And when it was created by Donovan, the OSS converted to the CIA. You had the first leaders, Colby, Dulles, the whole bunch of them. You had pretty much what was considered the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant until the 1960s, when Jews and Catholics were allowed to come in. What's happened over the era is that the CIA really got out of control. And Eisenhower said correctly, and this is the president I admire the most, along with George Marshall, the man who appointed Eisenhower, is that this is a legacy of ashes. And the CIA has been a problem for many, many decades. I myself, although I was trained by the CIA at MIT, I did not belong to the CIA per se. I worked with them. Like anything else, there was the good, the bad, and the ugly. However, over the period when Jimmy Carter was in, I approved the fact that, along with Stanfield Turner, Admiral Turner, they got rid of about 4,000 operatives. We didn't need them. The reason we didn't need them is we had military intelligence, we had political officers, so we have a reduplication of an entity, kind of the equivalent of the FBI, but not doing very well on the covert side. The civilians were really a problem. And so when you produce CIA operatives like Bill Clinton, who worked for the CIA, Hillary Clinton, who worked for the CIA, you have Obama, the black baby of the CIA, incredible. An American whose mother was a brilliant CIA operative in the Far East, and she was an anthropologist. Then you have infiltrated the CIA along with an idiot like John Brennan and Tenet. You have an incompetency that shifts to any side that the political wind was in. So when you had the Clintons and you had Obama, they were shifting to the left. When you had an idiot like Bush Jr., they were basically acquiescing to everything. When I went back into the CIA and I threatened several of the CIA officers with many things that I can do, they admitted to me that there was a stand down, there was a false flag. The deputy to Paul Wolfowitz admitted it to me. And the neocons were all co-opted by the CIA. So when I went through the entire Pentagon, all I saw was the CIA. Then I went to my military officers, Keith Alexander, Jerry Boykin, and others, and explained to them that you are in the hands of an incompetent civilian structure which dreams of being paramilitary and taking over covert operatives. In reality, the CIA has lost human. It became absolutely a dysfunctional organization. But what it did exceedingly well, it went to Hollywood under John Brennan and gave somebody like Kathy Bigelow, a very seductive, manipulative little director, Zero Dark 30, a total BS story about how they killed Osama bin Laden. And Obama, the biggest pathological liar, along with Bush Jr. and Clinton, said that he assassinated Osama bin Laden. That's the kind of nonsense that came in the CIA, where you, myself, and others were able to kind of realign that and bring into the fold the military intelligence. Why was that a difference? Because in the military system, we have accountability. We have an oath to the country.
Sure. We're almost out of time. I mean, the point is at least people had to be in combat and be trained to do real things, not just sit around in their little black suits and say we're CIA, a bunch of white shoe fops and fakes that want to act tough and that have taken over most of the country. And so what I've seen with Trump is he's got Pompeo and other people in there, and really they're trying to get back on mission, back on free market, and trying to tear out all of the little sycophants, and that's why the sycophants are so pissed. So they're all now rushing openly in like a counter coup to try to overthrow everything. But instead, all they're doing is pissing everybody off even more and making everybody know they were right about this fifth column of snot-nosed weirdos like Anderson Cooper who are so insecure they want to mount America's head on the wall because they want to feel powerful. And so now they've made the sleeping giant stand up, and now they're in full panic mode.
He trained in the CIA every summer. He was a clerk. He was one of the few homosexual clerks for the CIA. He doesn't deny it. I mean, basically, he's not relevant.
No, but is that an accurate statement then? So describe the counter coup of Trump and what's happening and why it's got the corrupt elements of the deep state so upset.
What has happened since we came in, and it was with your help as well. A year and a half ago, I said, the military will be taking over the White House. We will be taking over the Defense Department. We won't have any more of these jerk civilians like Panetta. And we're going to take over intelligence as well. So military intelligence became far more important than the CIA. The CIA could no longer do human. So we transferred a lot of human into the military aspects. The CIA barely can do cyberkinetics or cyber command, and instead we have a guy who's...
Also, the CIA people are always trying to make money and run some scam or engage in criminal activity, but the military, which I have seen, remember 4 years ago when the military had a press conference separate from Obama, when they'd already broken with Obama over the Middle East, and they said, we're going to stop lying, but we're also going to put the military in every town to engage with you. And I said, oh, look, that's going to be the takeover interface if they're actually lying. But one way or the other, that has now happened. And the CIA is too lazy to actually engage in any humat. They literally are like college fraternities that just sit around in smoking jackets.
Well, basically, they're not qualified. They don't study psychology. I know the farm. I know what their capabilities. They've lost that capability. But at the same time, we have another structure which is incompetent, DNI, that came out of 9/11. So if I were Trump and I were Pompeo, I would clean out the DNI. I don't need a director of national intelligence. I would clean out the 18 different units of intelligence that we really don't need. It's a duplication. And Trump is very good at firing at will. That's exactly how private businesses run.
Now, you always say we need lots of firing and bring people through and see what happens. Okay, very interesting discussion. The people should read the article about the left is flooding everything. You don't have to be in the CIA or be in the military to run for office. Either if you're a patriot, you care about the country, everybody needs to run for office, speak at city council, engage, flood them with the truth, and take government back at every level. And that's that. I'll come back with Roger Stone and the latest bomb news and more. Thank you, Steve PIECZENICK, StevePIECZENICK.com. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com.